Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome everybody to the Bike and Pedestrian Advisory Committee meeting of September 17th. Um, we first have on the agenda the roll call. So, Charlene, do you want to go through the jurisdictions with the roll call?
City of Annapolis, who's not here right now. Anne Arundel County.
Tanya Asman is present.
I'm actually here. This is City of Annapolis. This is Will Rowell.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Baltimore City.
Hi. Oh, I'm here as well. And I think somebody else is too.
Also, Tyler, Douglas Vehicles, Baltimore City.
Oh, hey, Tyler.
Wonderful. Baltimore County.
Hi, it's Jessie Bialik with Baltimore County.
Great. Carroll County. Harford County.
I'm here.
Howard County.
Hi, Chris is here.
Queen Anne's County.
Here.
MDE. MDP. MHSO.
Hi, everybody.
MTA.
Brittany Sink here.
SHA.
Hi, Molly Porter here.
TSO.
Good afternoon, Meg Young.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks everybody for being here. Next on the agenda, we have the approval of the July minutes. They've been circulated. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Does anybody have any corrections or adjustments to the minutes? If not, could we get a motion to approve the minutes? The first and the second?
A motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, all right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, with that, the minutes pass. The motion passes.
Right.
Next item on the agenda is a presentation, Maryland DNR proposal to open state trails to e-bikes. So I will turn that over to Miss Isabel Layton.
Hello, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and share a little bit about the proposed e-bike regulations with you. Before we get started, I just put in the chat a series of useful links, which I will be referencing throughout the presentation. And at the end of the presentation, I will put my contact information in the chat in case you have any questions or want to chat further about this. Perfect. So as I acknowledge, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, but I find it always very helpful to kind of reorient myself with the e-bikes and this policy by starting off with a quick summary of what is an e-bike and almost more importantly, what is not an e-bike. So according to the DNR proposed regulation, an e-bike is operated by human power with the assistance of an electric motor, has fully operable pedals, has 2 or 3 wheels, has a motor with a rating of 750 watts or less, and is class 1, 2, or 3. We did reference the MDOT regulation within the drafting of our regulation, which I'll go into in a minute. So sometimes it's also helpful to have a visual cue. So on the left, we have e-bikes, and on the right, we have other bicycle type machines, but we do not consider those e-bikes based on the definition which we have created for this draft regulation. Perfect. Next, I wanted to quickly review classes 1, 2, and 3. So the DNR proposed regulation allows for class 1 and 3, and we'll go through the regulation towards the end of this presentation. So all 3 classes are assist while pedaling, and class 1 and 3 are do not provide assistance while not pedaling. So another way to say that is class 1 and 3 are pedal assist. Class 2 is not pedal assist. And here we also have some information about when it reaches a certain speed, it kind of stops giving that assistance. Perfect. So I wanted to give a little bit of context as to how we built the e-bike DNR recommendations for that policy. We had an internal advisory group with representatives from land managers from the State Park Service, the State Forest Service, and our Wildlife and Heritage Service who manage a lot of our hunting areas. We also had input from Natural Resource Police, Land Acquisition and Planning, and we got input from the Office of the Attorney General at DNR. So that was our internal advisory group. In addition, we spoke with hiking groups, equestrian groups, and biking groups, some of whom work on the national level. So we did quite a bit of stakeholder input and reaching out to different organizations. When we were thinking about how to draft these regulations, we found 3 clear regulation pathways. The first was to simply ban e-bikes on state lands. The second was to regulate the equipment itself. And the third was to regulate user behavior. So as we'll go into, we did a little bit of regulating the equipment and a little bit of regulating user behavior. Perfect. And now we will get into the draft regulations. So using these regulations, again, we are establishing where bikes and e-bikes cannot go on state lands. In the regulation, we also included a definition of bicycles as designed to be operated by human power and with 2 or 3 wheels, one of which is more than 14 inches in diameter. For e-bikes, we had those qualifications, which I mentioned earlier. And in addition, we have that an adaptive bicycle equipped with an electric assist motor is considered an e-bike. We spoke with some members of the adaptive community who were able to explain to us that for some of the physics behind an adaptive mountain bike, they have to have the throttle, just with the way that the bike is designed and with kind of the physics layout of it. So we were sure to include that in our draft regulations. Perfect. Next, the Secretary of DNR or their designee can restrict the use of a bike or an e-bike based on trail designation for a certain user group. For example, if a trail was built to be hiker only, lack of appropriate infrastructure, for example, a bridge that cannot support e-bikes, or some of our trails have a series of steps on them, which would not be a great place for bikes or e-bikes to ride. Additionally, some of our lands are under critical habitat protection or wildlands, and in general, any safety concerns. Perfect. So then we kind of close the regulation with hoping to create guidance and regulate user behavior. So we included a provision that a person may not operate a bike or an e-bike recklessly, carelessly, or with negligence, disregarding the rights or safety of others, under the influence of alcohol or drugs, or causing damage to property, wildlife, vegetative resources, or individuals. This will be communicated on a trailhead, bulletin board, or on the DNR website. In addition, I wanted to mention that we're working on a public kind of, we're not quite calling it Share the Trail, but it'll be that kind of same reminding all trail users of acceptable trail etiquette and reminding everyone to take care of their fellow recreationists on the trail. So that is a kind of very quick summary of the e-bike regulation. I wanted to be sure to save some time for any questions, comments, concerns. This was a long process and we tried to take a lot of stakeholder input into consideration, and as well as kind of the input from a lot of our land managers who are seeing a lot of e-bikes on their trails. So we wanted to make sure that we were taking everyone's thoughts and opinions into account. Going off of that, as I mentioned, the public comment period is open through Monday, September 22nd at midnight. And I believe that that's one of the links that I put in the chat. So I know I kind of sped through that and I went a little bit fast. Does anybody have any questions, comments?
We'll open that up to BPAG members first if they have any questions.
Hi, this is Chris with Howard County. I guess maybe you're going to mention this, but what is the process to change this? Is it, internal with DNR? Does it need to go to state legislation? And then, what's the timeline for that process also?
Absolutely, thank you. So the public review period opened on August 22nd and it will close on September 22nd. After that, we will take all of the comments and DNR will review them and make any needed changes to the regulations, which will then become effective on October 27th of this year. So it will be a DNR process. I don't think it will be going to the Maryland General Assembly, as my understanding of it.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I'll also say that, it's great to hear that DNR is moving in this direction. I'm a frequent user of state parks, trails, and, I think with sensible guidelines like you guys are working on here, I think e-bikes are welcome and just necessary with the times to be allowed on state park trails. So thank you for working on this.
Absolutely. Thank you. We appreciate the support. We know we've been working on this regulation for a bit and are very excited for it to move forward.
So one question with the adoption of regulations, have you had any discussions or thinking ahead about how enforcement will take place, or have any kind of thoughts on what to expect there, or how you would monitor what bikes are being unloaded or used on the trails, or how that would work?
Absolutely. We did have the Natural Resource Police be a part of this conversation. We are working with them to figure out what the best way to regulate is. We did have a big portion of the conversation was that we want to make sure that we have regulations that will benefit us, benefit the public, and which can be enforced, which is part of the reason that we decided to go with type of bike instead of like speed or something like that. I know that NRP, I believe, is working with the different land managers to figure out what that's going to look like park to park. And hopefully, especially with the guidance of like the Share the Trail type campaign that we're doing, that will reduce hopefully most of the user conflict. And a lot of what we heard from the land managers is that these e-bikes are already on state lands, even though they're technically not allowed there, and that they have not seen an increase in user conflict or accidents or calls or anything like that. So we're hoping that that trend stays, but we're prepared in case it doesn't.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Anybody else have any other questions or comments?
I've got a question, but I'll hold and see if anybody else has one first.
Yeah, I mean, it strikes me like in the CNO Canal towpath context, which may or may not be applicable for this, that like one of the main concerns is like pedestrians being passed by an e-bike going at a high speed. Was there a thought put toward like slow down while passing or messaging in that vein considered or anything like that?
Yes, definitely. That is one comment which we received a bit, especially on the NCR trail, which runs north of Baltimore, about people who take their e-bikes and it almost feels like they're racing down the trail when that's maybe not the most appropriate use of that trail. So we have talked about providing messaging specifically for the people who are interested in that kind of recreation, saying maybe this isn't the best place for it. There is an organization, I want to say out of California, who we met with, and their slogan was slow and say hello. And that was between mountain bikers and equestrians to kind of remind people to slow down, take the time to greet the people around you, and then continue on your adventure. So we're hoping to parallel that a bit in our messaging.
Any more questions? I had a question kind of pivoting off that. We have heard a lot of concerns about, bikes being really fast and on trails when they're kind of mixed use, like Tyler was saying. And we often see that class 1 and class 2 bikes are allowed on shared use paths, so not outside state parks, but class 3 aren't. So I was interested in hearing more about the kind of decision-making and banning throttle assist with pedal assist versus the speed limit, because it seems like the higher speed would be maybe more of a safety or courtesy issue with the 28 miles per hour with the class 3.
Definitely. It was interesting because that is definitely one route that we looked at. We got some feedback from the Natural Resource Police that for them, it's easier to regulate and just see if something has a throttle as opposed to seeing if something like going out there with radar guns, which they shared wasn't the most practical. We have been talking about maybe being able to allow some park managers in places like Assateague, where it's very flat and their concern is the speed over the kind of bike, to have like some sort of a speed restriction, but those conversations are still very early. We're kind of waiting to see what kind of feedback we get with the public review to see where we can go from there. And it makes for, when we were speaking with bike vendors, they were like, it's a lot easier for me to say I can have this class and that class, and then telling people to go a certain speed anyway. The last thing about that is some people shared that 20 miles an hour sounds really fast, and it is really fast, but some people can also get to that kind of on a non e-bike, on a traditional bike. So because it maxes out at that speed, when we spoke to some of the bikers, they were like, it sounds crazy, but it's not. And we were able to get on some bikes and be like, oh, this is what 20 miles an hour feels like on an e-bike versus on a regular bike. But that's something we're definitely still looking into.
Still don't quite understand the logic of not having the class 2 with the throttle assist, because it only goes to 20 miles per hour while the class 3 goes to 28. But yeah.
It was a lot of the Natural Resource Police saying it's easier to just say we can't have this because that's
But why wouldn't you allow them as well, I guess is my question. So allow all 3 types if that's a problem with the speed regulation, because the class 2 doesn't get assist above 20. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that what we had talked about was because it's still pedal assist, so you still have to like work to get to that 28 on a class 3, whereas on a class 2 you can just kind of hit the throttle and be there. So it like takes a little bit more, or it takes a little bit less to get there, so it could be more of a problem.
Gotcha. Okay. Any more questions?
Okay, any last comments? All right, thank you very much. That was very helpful and very informative, and we look forward to seeing the upcoming regulations. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'll put my contact information in the chat in case anyone wants to connect afterwards.
Great. Okay, next on the agenda is a presentation from MDOT Bicycle and Pedestrian Priority Areas, and Miss Molly Porter will be presenting for us.
Pull that up, Molly.
Thank you.
Let's see. Okay, should be good.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Molly Porter from the Grants and Program Management Division at the State Highway Administration. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about our bicycle and pedestrian priority areas. If you don't mind going to the next slide. So the bicycle and pedestrian priority areas, this is a program within our division where SHA can, in collaboration with local partners, designate areas with high potential for biking and walking. I see a lot of familiar names who have been involved with this program before, which is exciting. So I will just go over some of the things that this program can and cannot do and go into our application cycle. So the BPPAs facilitate coordination with state, local, and private stakeholders. They really work to align state and local planning goals and then provide for potential innovative bicycle and pedestrian treatments. On the other hand, what BPPAs cannot do is provide direct state funding for capital improvement projects, replace existing transportation plans and goals, or supersede existing bicycle and pedestrian guidelines. Next slide. So during the BPPA application procedures, there can be multiple areas designated as a BPPA, but depending on funding availability, SHA can select one area to lead and fund development of a BPPA plan in partnership with the local jurisdiction and affected stakeholders. Important to note that this plan will be led and funded by SHA if there is an SHA roadway within the area. If there is not an SHA roadway, the plan would be funded by the local jurisdiction and led by the local jurisdiction. Next slide. So what types of areas can be considered to be designated as a BPPA? We are looking for areas where there's a high potential for biking and walking as a transportation mode. So generally this means urban areas, main streets, and or tourist centers. We want this to be a focused area to look for, very localized opportunities. So in general, a half-mile radius with surmountable obstacles to biking, walking, and safety. Areas that emphasize multimodal transportation that is shown, by previous work that has been done in the area, by proactively removing barriers to opportunity, and then also a proven local commitment to biking and walking. And this can be done through local comprehensive plan, transportation plans, or by a local designation by the jurisdiction itself. Next slide. So this is the FY 2026 timeline. The application for this year opened 2 days ago and will close on October 17th. The applications can be submitted by email to Shane Sarver. His email address is sarver@mdot.maryland.gov, and I'll be sure to put that in the chat. When the applications are received, the SHA review committee will go ahead and review all of them and make their recommendation for designation in the fall around November time frame. And then when there's funding for the plan, we will spend the spring, summer of 2026 putting together that plan. And then the application for FY 2027 will start in September 2026. So that is a high-level overview of the program itself and the process for the program. The next slide gives our contact information, both mine and Shane's contact information for any questions about this program, about the process. I'm happy to address them now as well. And I will put the website in the chat where you can access the application if you were interested in getting started with the state BPPA designation. But any questions at this point?
Okay, thank you, Molly. That was very helpful. Any questions or comments? One more chance. Okay, thank you, Molly, for the update and appreciate that. Okay, the next item on our agenda is a presentation of the Maryland State Transportation Trail Strategic Plan, and Meg Young will be presenting to us.
Great. Meg, you should be able to share now.
Great, thank you. And then, John, so Charlene and I also added a presentation about Walktober to my agenda items.
Oh, wonderful.
To be doing well with our time here. So we'll go over the Transportation Trail Strategic Plan first, and then I can take questions on that before we transition to Walktober, if that works with everybody.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So good afternoon, everybody. Meg Young, I'm our Deputy Director of Active Transportation and Micromobility at MDOT in the Secretary's Office, and here to present to you about the Maryland Statewide Transportation Trails Strategic Plan, which we released on September 4th. We released this along with a webinar on September 4th, so if you did not catch that, you can see an extended version of this as soon as we post it on our website. We're still waiting on the final recording, but that webinar included some pretty great panelists, Rails to Trails Conservancy, and then also somebody from the Great Allegheny Passage Conservancy and the Frostburg Outdoor Recreation Economy Institute. So This is all going to be MDOT today, but if you want to hear from some of our stakeholders and trail implementers, I encourage you to go back and watch that webinar. All right, but what is a transportation trail? The focus of this plan are trails that connect to the transportation network. We did not look at mountain biking trails or hiking trails. We really focused on shared use paths, side paths, again, something that connects to the transportation network, a roadway in at least 2 spots so it can be accessed and take people to destinations. Transportation trails also are predominantly ADA compliant, although some trails like the NCR that are crushed gravel are also grandfathered into this definition. This plan was an update to a 2009 plan. This is the first time MDOT had updated our trails plan since then, and it was really called for in the 2050 Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan that we needed to update this. And then also with the passing of Complete Streets last year, we realized that transportation trails and shared use paths are a huge piece of our toolkit in different contexts to provide multimodal accommodation. So as a result, looking at scoping out this plan, we wanted to inventory and make sure we had a complete data set of existing and planned shared use paths. We want to look at prioritizing missing links. And then the key part of this is that it's really a strategic plan. So we wanted to identify tools and partners to complete shared use path and transportation trail projects. We did not crunch data and spend a whole bunch of time making a map of all potential trails because we wanted to hone in on trails that are already somewhere in the process in an adopted plan somewhere and focus on how to move these projects more quickly through to implementation and construction. So this project kicked off a year ago at this point, and we had a big team behind it. At MDOT, we had a project team that included the State Highway Administration and the Department of Natural Resources, as well as a consultant team. Then to check our work and make sure we're providing the right tools to partners, we formed a Trails Advisory Committee, a TAC as we were calling it, where we reached out to every county across the state, as well as local jurisdictions. And we ended up with a group of about 100 people representing all of our counties, representing cities, large trail efforts, the National Park Service, the East Coast Greenway, all of those big stakeholders across the state who play a role in advancing trail projects. And I can't stress enough how essential this advisory committee was to check our work, to help us gather data, to publicize our webinars and our engagement opportunities. So they've really helped guide this project all along the way. With that TAC, the vision and goals for the plan are to create a safe and accessible transportation trail network that connects Marylanders to opportunities across their communities, towns, and the state. We came up with 5 specific goals: empowering local communities, reducing traffic fatalities and injuries, connecting people to opportunity, ensuring a high quality trail network, and then coordinate state agencies across Maryland to better use resources. And our process along the way, we started with our existing conditions report and really making sure that we knew the state of trails on the ground. So our existing condition report really dove into all of our existing policies and processes, from complete streets to rail banking to our latest standards. We then worked with the TAC to build out the transportation trails database, and this was a really great exercise where we not only made sure that our GIS database of existing transportation trails was up to date, but we also inventoried all of the local plans to map out any planned trails across the state. And that was the first about 6 months of the project. And then we changed gears for part 2. We had an online survey, webinar, and listening sessions to really hone in on the toolkits for implementation and our final plan. So now, as an end result, after a year of work, we have our final plan, which you can download on the MDOT website or from our interactive website. And then this interactive website really takes the plan and the toolkits to life. And there's a lot of ways to click around. And it is going to continue to be a live and interactive website that we update to show our progress with transportation trails. So the trail database, an interactive map that I mentioned, we spent a long time compiling this with all of our TAC members, but now you can actually explore it and customize the map. If you go to the interactive website, you can look at trails that are potential. That means that maybe an advocacy group is calling for this trail, or it's has a little bit of groundswell. The second category is planned. Those are trails that are actually in a locally adopted plan, in a priority letter, or have some sort of feasibility study done. And then existing. And the reason for these different categories is to actually be able to show the progress as we implement the plan over the course of the year. So you can click around, you can look by county, you can look by phase, and this is something that we're going to continue to update. I think we're actually going to kick off the update at the beginning of 2026, where we inventory any newly adopted plans to be a part of this interactive map. The Transportation Trails Survey, we had about 680 responses to, and really honed in on what the public thinks of transportation trails, how they use them, and their support. So I won't read all of this to you, but you can download the survey results from our website. And this really guided kind of our final vision and priorities for the plan. Is interesting when you download the survey results, you can actually see a breakdown between trail users and non-users. The majority of respondents were trail users, but 13% were not. And then when we look at planned trails, we had a mapping exercise where you could actually look at planned trails in your area. And while only about 50% of respondents knew about all of the planned trails, 93% of trail users still supported them, and 70% of non-users supported all of the planned trails in their region. When it came to priorities, it was interesting that non-users prefer prioritizing areas without existing trails, and I think that kind of speaks to perhaps the reason why they're not currently using trails is that they don't have one in their area. Again, you can download all of these full results from our websites. So then when we got into crafting the final product, the Transportation Trails Strategic Plan, it's really all structured around this trail project lifecycle analysis. Because again, as a strategic plan, our focus was making it easier for trail projects to advance from when they're just building support to being constructed, and then making sure they're still being operated and maintained. So we broke out this project lifecycle analysis, and you're going to see it on a couple of these slides. We identified building support, funding, and operations as and maintenance, these ones that are actually arrows because they never end, for our toolkits. Building support, funding, and maintenance are ongoing and shared responsibility where MDOT works with local partners. So these toolkits, building support for trails, funding transportation trails, and maintaining transportation trails really get into strategies and provide a lot of resources for each of these phases. Those are also available on the interactive website. You can download the PDF, and then some of the tools are broken out on each tab, and you can explore some case studies from across Maryland, from locations where they've really done a good job in that particular phase. So for building support, for example, The Carroll Creek Linear Park is highlighted out in Frederick. That was an interesting project, combined some EPA funding, flood mitigation, as well as a lot of support from local businesses. The plan also breaks out different roles for the trail building process, identifies where you would expect MDOT or state agency to take the lead versus our local partners. Again, I think this is interesting and helps us to identify who does what throughout the development of a trail, and can be explored on the website. Sorry, I'm flying through these. The plan then also recommends project selection criteria for local plans, and for potential grant applications. So for this, we looked at the existing database, our survey responses, project feasibility and readiness, funding metrics for different grants, and state priorities and goals. And for this, we're recommending what local jurisdictions would look at when they're selecting potential projects, again, for either inclusion in a local plan, priority letter, or for a grant application. From this, we came up with recommended criteria: improving safety, access to opportunity, access to parks, transit, gap-filling projects, and then access to activity centers or destinations. This is also a tab on the website where you can toggle off on and off different metrics for each of those criteria. So for safety improvements, you can look at what our VRU corridors, our vulnerable roadway user corridors are. You can look at those activity centers designated by the state, whether it's main streets or sustainable communities. And then you can actually toggle them on and off, and then select which criteria applies to your project. Again, this is a living website, so our plan for this is to update this when our FY27 grants are announced and we know all of the criteria for things like the Kim Lamphere Bikeways Network or the Transportation Alternatives Program. So for each of these, you would be able to see, okay, Maryland Main Street, this is a criteria for bikeways, and it could help guide which grant program you might apply to. This little zoom in is of Westminster, and you can see in this sort of teal color a vulnerable roadway user risk area, high risk area. In red is a main streets, and then you can see the sustainable communities and priority funding areas as well. So you can see what applies to different parts of the states. In addition to the criteria for locally sponsored projects, we also put forth some criteria that would lead to MDOT being more involved in a transportation trail project. Those are on the screen right now. These are cross-jurisdictional projects, projects that overcome large barriers, projects in the MDOT right-of-way. And then we proposed a new designation for Maryland destination trails. These are trails that are constructed and are destinations in and of themselves, either 10 miles or longer in length, or scenic trails noteworthy for their historical or cultural features. But if a trail project meets 2 or more of these criteria, these are projects that MDOT might play a larger role in, either providing technical assistance, or for things in the MDOT right-of-way, leading the project altogether. So you can explore on the website, and in the plan, we announced 14 of these projects that we're going to be tracking in the near term. These are, again, projects that meet 2 or more of those criteria, and are really span the whole state. Many of these you can click around on the map and see where they are currently in progress. And then the Maryland destination trails, again, are those that are already constructed, but that we want to keep an eye, make sure maintenance and operations continues to be monitored. And then last but not least, the Transportation Trails Plan makes a number of policy recommendations for MDOT and our state agency partners. You know, for locals, we're providing those toolkits and some guidance for project selection. But when we took a look at our own policies and processes, we uncovered a number of places for improvement. This is just a sampling of the recommendations. But they're divided up into project life cycle, and then on the website you can even toggle through, you know, whose responsibility it is, the time frame, all of those different factors. So some examples for building support: we want to make the Technical Advisory Committee into a permanent subcommittee of the Maryland Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. The BPAG committee is a great venue for us to work with our fellow state agencies. And so by having a subcommittee, we think we can continue to work with DNR and the Department of Tourism and Commerce to keep trails in the forefront. If we jump down to land acquisition, we're also exploring proposals to codify our rail banking and trail sponsorship by state agencies. And then going all the way down to implementation, we're recommending that we update all of our data layers, as well as our traffic monitoring system and counts, so that we can continue to integrate trails into the transportation network and do a thorough complete streets evaluation of new facilities. So all of this is now live. It's on the MDOT website at mdot.maryland.gov/trailsplan, and then you can link to the interactive website, and I'll also put that in the chat. But on both of these, you can download the plans, and then when you get onto the interactive website, you can play around with a lot of different tools. And the interactive website is where we'll also be posting progress. We have benchmarked data, and then we'll be doing at least annual updates to the data, to the tracked projects, and the implementation of the policy recommendations. So, open the floor for any questions or comments about the Trails Plan.
Meg, where did the plan get the data for the existing and planned trails? I just, I was just playing around there in Howard County, and I think we have some additions. So I guess the question is, where did the data come from, and can we update it, at least on the virtual map?
Yeah. So the data came from a call to all of the technical advisory committee members, to get, the GIS files behind local plans. There are definitely, we're not calling it an authoritative layer, because we've been made aware of some planned trails that are not on there. But we'll be doing an update, of course. We had to have kind of like a pencils down. We knew it wasn't perfect, but we had to get it where we could. And then I think starting in January, I have a very enthusiastic intern that's going to go county to county again, to go over this with them, make sure there's nothing missing from the database.
Yeah, I'd be happy to participate in that, but I was also going to suggest that the BMC bike network GIS files might be useful. I mean, I think their categories, are just going to be similar, shared use pathways, or, something that they have categorized, and they have them in planned and designed type categories. So you might just be able to pull from there also.
Yeah, we did actually, we did get the files from Charlene from like the Bikeable Baltimore region work, and everything that BMC had. So that should all be represented in there.
Well, let's say it's an older data set, so we have a more updated one that's had some improvements. And then I think I wasn't totally clear on it, but I think some of the planned facilities weren't included that were in our database, but we can coordinate on that, with the locals as well. But yeah.
Charlene. Yeah, I have an intern, a PhD intern this year who is very enthusiastic and into GIS. We have a work plan for her to go through and double check not only this database, but then also to look at other planned bike facilities and ped facilities outside of trails as well, to help our SHA engineers implement, the full complete streets policy and be able to have a clear, like an easier way to reference local plans. So we will be reaching out to Charlene and everyone on this call, I'm sure, in the coming months.
That's exciting.
Mhm. It is. All of our GIS folks and our data folks have been super receptive about adding more data for bike ped, for trails, into our traffic monitoring system, into our OMOC, our One Maryland, One Center line. So here at TSO, we're just trying to provide a little bit more capacity to make that happen for them to use. Yeah.
I appreciate it. That working with MDOT is the only reason we were able to do kind of the big detailed analysis that we did for the BPR plan. So we appreciate partnering with you all.
Wow. All right.
I have one other comment, and I was just waiting to see if anybody else was coming in.
Sure.
So on the topic of maintenance of these transportation trails, I mean, I did look through the plan and see that there's some recommendations on that category, and it seems like it's pretty well covered on that topic of maintenance. I was glad to see that. I think it's really important that that gets looked at, especially as we add some key transportation trails in state right-of-ways along state roadways. I mean, the PSAP project in Howard County is a good example where we're state's adding a lot of shared use pathway alongside Route 1. And it's really challenging to figure out who's going to maintain that. And MDOT SHA is typically or really not maintaining those kind of facilities currently. So I'm glad to see that there's some recommendations in the plan, and hopefully they can get followed through on, and it might even be a subgroup of your subgroup to take on maintenance specifically and to try to push forward some of those policy recommendations.
This was a big focus because it's in state code that anything outside of the roadway, sidewalk, or shared use path becomes responsibility of the local jurisdiction. But we are working with USDOT right now for a peer exchange, looking at a couple other states at how they've worked within similar parameters to provide, whether it's assistance or like this year we allowed a state of good repair under bikeways for maintenance of bike and shared use paths. So trying to do some creative thinking, but also looking at different ways to approach maintenance. And that PSAP corridor on Route 1, I think, is going to be our example project for the peer exchange, Chris.
Yeah, I like to hear that. I mean, it's very relevant, very timely, and I
Mhm.
think that's a great choice.
Yeah, and then it crosses over into Prince George's County, so we can look at it with different SHA districts, different local partners. So it allows us to explore it from a couple different directions. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions on that presentation? Okay, if not, also Eric has joined us. So our chairman is back and I will turn the meeting over to him. And Meg has the next presentation on Walktober that she's added to her agenda item. So Meg, would you like to go ahead and do that? And Eric, from now on, you got the meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. Sorry I was late, everybody, but go ahead, Meg.
Sure. All right. Let's keep going. Walktober 2025. It's right around the corner. And I believe we have Francine Waters, yes, on the line, who is the real mastermind behind Walktober. So I'm going to hand this over to her about halfway through. But but we'll go over our Walktober goals, the outcomes from 2024 Walktober, and then our plans for 2025. Make sure, I'm sorry, is this the most up to date? Yes, okay. Our strategies for Walktober, what we're trying to achieve. Walktober is a month-long celebration where we really bring focus to walking and pedestrian safety, and everything it can affect, from your health to your community. The goals are to create a culture of safety. That's really an emphasis for MDOT. We want to demonstrate leadership and achieving walkability through real investments. We coordinate with other state agencies and engage with a number of partners. We have over 50 partners on our partner list. And then educate Marylanders, the general public, about walkability and provide outlets for them to walk, but also engage in different civic processes. So in 2024, we had some pretty good numbers. And since Francine launched this in 2020, we've had a 20-fold increase in engagement. 2024, we restructured the walk-in-ours a little bit to include nationally known speakers paired with our Maryland experts, and saw a huge increase in registrations. Our 2024 secretary panel, which included secretaries of several state agencies who are all part of the Sustainable Growth Subcabinet, was by far our most popular. And so we brought that back for 2025, but that was a big factor in this huge increase you're seeing down here in this graph of our clicks and registrations for walk-in-ours. In 2024, Walk Maryland Day also had an increased number of walks from 2020. That's grown from 20 to 51 partners, and we had 103 walks last year, official walks. And then last year, we also added Walk to School Day to our to part of Walktober, and saw 55 schools participate thanks to a partnership we have with the Maryland State Department of Education. So we took this and looked at what we want to achieve in 2025. For 2025, we wanted to continue the planning and coordination of outcomes. We're going to track for the first time steps and miles walked through the events. We want to increase participation with our partners. And so at each of our walk-in-ours this year, you're going to see some of our featured partners under the spotlight. And then we wanted to maintain those great attendance levels from our 2024 walk-in-ours. And this year we expanded those walk-in-ours into our MDOT in Motion series that I think most of y'all are aware of, but we wanted to build on that big audience and now have been showcasing monthly webinars on different topics. Excuse me, 1 second. I'm just going to hand this over to Francine, but I don't know if this is our up-to-date presentation that has all of the speakers and headshots. So give me 1 minute. She has the full program now live and registration links ready to go. So I want to make sure I have all of those on the screen.
If not, I can share my screen. I think I have it, Meg.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what happened to this presentation. It's missing some of those slides now. So if you have the one that has all of the headshots, maybe it's the one that I
Yeah, I
emailed
do.
to Charlene earlier.
So I'll just start here. And
thanks, Francine.
You're welcome. I'm just I need to share my screen, otherwise you won't see what I'm doing. Doesn't work that way, does it? Okay. Just looking for the share. There we go. Okay, so the question now is, can you see my screen?
We cannot yet, but I've also found it.
I hit share.
Here, I've got it now, Francine, I found it. Okay.
You got it?
I've got it here now. So the 2025 Walktober schedule, thanks everyone for your patience. Kicks off with Walk Maryland Day on October 1st. October 8th is Walk to School Day. And then we have an exciting program of walk-in-ours. So Francine, you want to walk us through this?
What a pun. Love it. Thank you. So Walk Maryland Day, our traditional Walk Maryland Day. We are, of course, partnering with the Maryland Department of Health, who has a registration for your walks for Walk Maryland Day, walk leaders, and soulmates. So I encourage you to check that out. As in last year, MDH is going to keep track of steps. It's October 1st, traditionally, and as you are well aware, walking is the state of Maryland's official exercise. So then, as shown here, you can register as the walk leader or a soulmate. If you're interested in not necessarily being the leader of a walk, you can certainly join as a soulmate, and you can find a walk based on your location if you were to go on that website of MDH's. So next slide. And then, as Meg said, our association with the National Walk and Road to School Day, which is October 8th. And we are encouraging schools to register not only on the 8th, but as it even states here, at any point if they would register. And it is information that we do keep, and we are definitely encouraging the schools to participate. And there is also registration for schools as well. And that official date is October 8th. Next slide. So now we're talking about the walk-in-ours. And our very first walk-in-our is October 2nd, historically on Thursdays between 10:30 and noon. And this year we are having Mike McGinn of America Walks. He is the president of America Walks, has been a strong supporter of Walktober. Rachel Habash with Walk with the Doc, equally strong supporter of Walktober, and David Conway of AARP. So these three organizations have been extraordinarily supportive and active in Walktober and have developed walks throughout the state of Maryland. And AARP actually has a walk once, I believe, a month in Howard County. So we are highlighting their efforts and their support. Next slide. Our second walk-in-our highlights Philip Langdon, who's the author of Within Walking Distance. And he is supported by three panelists, Molly, who presented earlier today, Candice Holford, and Shane Sarver. So we look to the safety within communities. And again, we're very excited that Mr. Langdon has agreed to present his book. Next slide. And we have another author, Philip Langdon. Actually, that name is incorrect. His name is Bob Cerns, and we'll correct that. Bob is an author also of a great book, and he talks a great deal about trails. And I know that Meg shared with you all that MDOT is doing with trails, transportation trails. So this should be a great panel. And it will also explore with Thomas McKay rail banking and the challenges and results of rail banking. So again, his name is Robert Searns, Searns, and we'll make sure we correct this slide to his correct name and book. Next, please. And in support of our Walk and Road to School efforts this year, we are having a walk-in-hour on education. Taureen Kreppe is the president of Safe Kids Worldwide. Taureen made a presentation earlier this year through Cynthia Spriggs' Highway Safety Office, and Cynthia and Dwan are panelists that are supporting Taureen in talking about on the ground what it takes to encourage walking in our educational system. So we're very excited to have Taureen join us and present. And lastly, this is, again, from last year, was our most popular walk-in-hour. We have Acting Transportation Secretary Samantha Biddle, Secretary of Planning Rebecca Flora, Secretary of Commerce Harry Coker, and Assistant Secretary of Policy at DHCD Scott Gottbrett. So we're very excited that they have accepted to join, and we look forward to a very lively discussion of walking and how it intersects with each of these agencies. Next slide. So I encourage you to reach out to me if you have not received our press kit. We look to our partners and to each of you to help amplify the word and get the word out for people to register register walks, whether it's during the month of October or throughout the year. I can share with you today that we have received the governor's proclamation proclaiming October Walktober. So we're very excited to get the support of the governor's office on this. And I also want to share with you that tomorrow is our pedestrian subcommittee, which was born out of Walktober. So you are welcome, please, to join the committee meeting, which is tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, I believe. And if you would like a link to that virtual meeting, please reach out to me. This is my email address. I would ask that for those of you who have walks during the month of October or beyond, please share with us information on the walks and also share any photographs. We certainly appreciate the photos of all the walks around the state of Maryland. And last year, I believe we had a walk in every county within the state. And I hope that this year we will achieve the same result as well. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or Meg, I'm sure, would also answer if you have any questions. Well, with that, I really appreciate the opportunity to share with you Walktober and Walk Maryland Day. And as they say, let's get walking. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Francine and Meg. Appreciate it. As always, great work. It's getting better every year. We're up to our last presentation today. So I'm going to introduce Colin from Alta Planning and Design, who's been working on the Baltimore region plan with BMC, and many of you all are part of that. So good to see you, Colin.
Likewise. Yeah, thanks for having me. And I know a lot of you, project is not going to be new to many of you. I think many of you, most in this room are involved to some degree in this development. And before I get started, I just want to check, Charlene, is there anything you wanted to start off with, or do you want me to just get into it?
Ready, you're ready to go. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Next slide. And so yeah, just for those who I haven't met, my name is Colin Hodges. I'm a planner with Alta Planning and Design. Our office is in Baltimore and Fells Point, and it's been an honor to be leading the consultant side of this team and working really closely with BMC and their leadership on this project as well. So to get into what we'll be covering today, so just going to give you an overview of the Bikeable Baltimore Region project, talk about the community engagement efforts that we went through to arrive at the end product, some of the data analysis we did to develop the network itself, show you an overview of the network, talk about the network benefits that we've calculated based on some national best practice calculation methods, and then also how, as you'll see, it's a big network, so how we're going to prioritize that network and implement it over time. And then talk about some next steps or what the next few months we'll be holding for the project. Next slide. So just a note, you'll see a lot of images with cyclists or apparently non-cyclists and some quotes, and we'll talk a little more about that, but BMC did really wonderful work getting out and about in the community and talking to people directly in terms of what they like about biking, what they'd like to see, just kind of informal conversations. So want to put those in as much as we could just to give an idea of what they've been finding. So overview, next slide. So the vision, we started with the vision, and of course we coordinated with the steering committee and others on this, and I'll just read it out. So the Baltimore region will work together to create a bicycle network that expands opportunities for users of all ages and abilities. This connected network will support improved safety, mobility, and access to jobs, schools, housing, transit, parks, and other daily destinations. So emphasizing here coordination and all ages and abilities, a comfortable network that encompasses a wide range of destinations, not just one type of activity, of course. Next slide. To try to start to implement that vision, first you start with goals, and we also have a whole host of objectives that we developed based on these goals, which I won't go into in detail just due to time and to keep things moving for the presentation, but the broad umbrella goals that we coordinated again with the steering committee on and got some public feedback on as well. 1, improve safety and accessibility, advance equity, connect people to places, support environmental and health benefits, consider context, and emphasize collaboration, support community development, set attainable ambitions, and maintain the network. So kind of a long list, but once the plan is released, you'll get a better idea of how we broke these down into concrete objectives, which actually the framework in the next slide will help elaborate on a little bit. So just to step back a bit, the framework of the plan itself, start with the vision, and then kind of continue down 2 tracks. We have goals and objectives, and then criteria and recommendations. Goals and objectives I just talked about a little bit. Criteria is something we used data and community input and stakeholder feedback to help identify, that would then in turn help us formulate or identify the recommendations for the plan, both network related, what's on the network and what's not in terms of the regional network, and what kind of supportive recommendations would we need to accompany it in order to proceed implementation. And then we have performance measures at the bottom that we developed in terms of how are we implementing these objectives and the network itself, and how are we tracking that over time. So they kind of come together at the end, both by being linked. Objectives and recommendations have associations, of course, but then the performance measures are really tracking those over time and being cohesive. Next slide. So why a regional bike network? Probably preaching to the choir here a little bit, but we have in this region about 600 miles of bike lanes and paths. And as anybody who rides in this region will know, and as we heard through all the outreach that we conducted, it's not a very connected network in many places. You have places where a comfortable facility might stop and then resume when we're just stopping completely, or maybe it transitions to a less comfortable facility where people might not feel comfortable making their entire trip because there's not that comfortable continuous connection. And as a second bullet here, that makes it harder for people to get around. And it's kind of the sum of that. And the next two bullets, talking a little bit more about why the regional network is helpful in this regard. So we have regional plans, or sorry, we have local bike plans at the county and city level and the state level. But looking at the regional bike network provides a cohesive look at which, considering all of these different plans and planning efforts and recommendations, what corridors are most important to facilitate connectivity through the region and create a continuous, comfortable network. And it's something that spans jurisdictions and is able to work to get jurisdictions, the region, and the state kind of on the same page in terms of what where the most bang for a buck could be if we were to invest in regional bike facilities that it would rise to the top to these different criteria. And then obviously having more ways to get around, including biking, helps people reach jobs, stay active, and then attendant benefits like reducing air pollution and vehicle emissions through fewer vehicle emissions and economic boosts as well. And we get into that a little more in the benefits section, which I have an overview about later on. Next slide. And then with that kind of broad explanation, it's important to talk about what the BBR network does and doesn't do, or what the plan does and doesn't do. So as I just mentioned, it's relying on local plans and the results of local efforts and state efforts. So what it identifies the most important connections throughout the region and how they connect together and what their relationship is to each other and what their priority is in terms of future development. And the plan then provides tools to track these recommendations and facilitate the implementation over time cohesively as a region. What it doesn't do is, this is not creating a kind of master bike ped plan for the region. So we're not creating any new we're not including any new bicycle recommendations. So we didn't go into Howard County, for example, and say, well, this road would be ideal for a regional connection, but it's not in a local plan. So let's put that in our plan. And we want to leave the detailed bike planning to the jurisdictions that have traditionally worked on those planning efforts. And instead, what this network does is identifies existing results of existing plans that can be joined together to create a connected network. And then, although it does not identify new bicycle connections in any jurisdiction, it does identify gaps. I'll get into that a little more later. But it's so where we see planned and existing bikeways that maybe have a break, that if that break were to be connected, we have then it would provide a more continuous facility. We have identified areas where kind of gap areas that would be used for future consideration for the jurisdiction themselves to look at what the best alternative to bridge that gap would be. But this plan doesn't tell us how we should bridge that gap. Next slide. So with that, just talk a bit about community engagement. We got out in the community quite a bit throughout this plan, and an overview is on the next slide in terms of the activities. So on the far left, we had a steering committee, many of whom are in the group today. So thanks for your service on that committee. The advisory committee, some from this group may also have served on that, so thank you as well. And of course, the BRTB technical committee and this committee. So I know that you've all received periodic updates in this plan in the past. So this is kind of the final update. And then for the listening phase, for the community focused engagement, we broke down the effort into two phases: listening and presenting. And this will be some of this will be familiar to those in this group who have received updates in the past. But for the listening phase, we prioritize getting out in person at least once to all the jurisdictions in the region. So that resulted in 8 in-person meetings and 2 virtual meetings. So we did have virtual options, but also we did get out into the community and set up shop in different community centers and libraries so that we could get direct feedback. And for those members of the community that did have the time and desire to attend something in person, we had that opportunity available. And then, so the listening phase, that was gathering information on people's priorities at an early stage, relatively early stage in the process, after data analysis and some other first steps were completed to get an idea of the direction we should be going with the network. And then the presenting phase actually provided people with a draft version of the network. So something for people to react to. And then in that vein, a lot of the feedback that we received was online focused. So a input map, a survey, and a project website and a story map. And we did have one in-person workshop opportunity, which we held in Baltimore City, and we had really good attendance in that. And then, so those, again, that were people that were willing and able to provide in-person feedback had that option. And then, as I mentioned before, 160, so on-site community interviews or handlebar interviews, as we kind of refer to them through the project, we conducted 168 of those. So that was really big effort, and BMC did, I think, the lion's share of the boots on the ground for that effort. And then virtual, I kind of mentioned a lot of these already, but on the virtual side, we did, and getting the word out, we had a story map that linked to an online survey, linked to a comment map, and also interacted with the BMC's project website. And the story map we updated 3 times. We had one version for listening phase, 2 during the presenting phase to present the network itself, and we're developing now a final version that will live on in the future as a overview of the process and its results. Next slide. And to get a little deeper in the advisory committee, on the right, it's a sample of the participants. We had a ton of participants here, I think over 80 individuals and groups. So it was quite a big list, which is great. But generally, they served as representatives for key stakeholders, provided input at several milestones. They offered guidance and shared experiences from their communities and organizations. So we got a lot of helpful feedback that way. Next. Steering committee. Again, this is, many of you are on this board or on this committee, but this was focused more on technical representation for the member jurisdictions, counties and cities and agencies. So making sure that these representatives could help inform project recommendations and vet what we were doing from the lens of the jurisdiction that would have to eventually implement these recommendations. So we did try to work very closely with the steering committee and present our progress at, I think, 7 different stages of the project. And then also helped expand the project's reach. The advisory committee did this too, but the steering committee helped get information out to communities, often attended, helped. So when we held a listening phase meeting in the local jurisdiction, the steering committee often there's a steering committee representative that was there to help be a bit of a liaison for the project too. So that was all wonderful work and extremely helpful input. So thank you again for all those in the steering committee. Next slide. And listening phase, as I mentioned, this is kind of a few photos of the meetings that we held, but they were in person, trying to get, and we held them through spring and summer 2024, kind of in a staggered manner, so that we had them staggered and there weren't 2 meetings happening at the same time. So, and then again, helped provide feedback on the network vision and goals, and helped us actually formulate the network itself. Next slide. Quick overview of results from that phase. This is a lot, and you'll be able to look at this more in detail when the plan itself is released. But I guess to focus on a few things, we heard, as I mentioned before in the beginning, that we heard about the lack of connected facilities and continuous facilities. We heard a lot about that, and then just generally the lack of comfortable bike lanes or paths. So, and then also we heard about bike parking, which I think we didn't really expect to be quite that high, but that we did work that into recommendations and objectives so that we could improve that in the region. But yeah, got a lot of feedback, and that directly informed the creation of the network itself. Next slide. So the presenting phase, we got a ton of feedback, and a lot of that feedback came from the online survey and the input map. The input map example is here on the right, and we got just a ton of great feedback. And again, as I mentioned before, that was mostly a virtual effort with one in-person workshop component, and yeah, had the story map and online comment map and survey, and just got a lot of good feedback. And I think we actually go to the next slide. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. So a lot of concurrence that, you know, this network would help get people safely and conveniently to their destinations. There was definitely, I think we heard that a lot of people wanted us to be more visionary in terms of creating new connections or creating, you know, bridging some of these bigger gaps in the network, which, as we discussed, is not something that was really in the purview of this plan. But I think it's definitely a call to, and, you know, reinforcement for future efforts where we have identified gaps in the network, which we'll, you know, see in a moment. You know, it's very important for the community through this process. We recognize it's very important for the community for those gaps to be closed over time and for them to be comfortable. So, but we heard a lot and got a lot of great feedback, and this information will be all be available in great detail in the plan itself. Next slide. Talked about community interviews or handlebar interviews a little earlier, and again, BMC really spearheaded this idea and an outreach effort, and we got a lot of great feedback. And I think as we were discussing in the advisory committee, steering committee, and internally, it really helped reinforce and so add some perspectives that we hadn't considered, but also reinforce, you know, the goals of the project in a way, because there are a lot of people out there that will not come to a public meeting, that will not necessarily even get engaged online, but they bike, they want to bike, they have transportation needs and objectives that, you know, a planning effort like this can help reach. So we heard a lot that reinforced and helped us in the process of messaging the plan, in developing the vision, and here's some more, and, you know, giving context for our effort, again, from people who may or may not have been at the main outreach events, but, you know, are people that we definitely want to reach and hear from. So it's an incredibly useful effort. Next step. Okay, so now getting into the data analysis. And I like hearing Michael's quote that he's never had a problem on the road. I wish that was the case for everybody. And that's some of the data analysis, you know, we got into. Definitely there are conflicts throughout the system, and this is where we kind of tried to focus some of the analysis. Next step. So as part of looking at getting the lay of the land, looking at current conditions or existing conditions, we looked at a variety of things. So looking at demand, where is there the most demand for biking? We've kind of oriented these around some questions initially. What is the bike network like today? Where are vulnerable populations we need to serve? They have transportation needs that are greater than the average. How comfortable and accessible is the bike network today? How and where are people biking today? Looking at mode share. And safety, what areas are experiencing the most critical safety issues? So those are sampling of the topics we looked at. And as you'll see in the next few slides, we did end up narrowing down or narrowing our focus to some of the data analyses or the data sets that really had an outsized impact on the development of the network for various reasons, which I'll go over in these slides here. So, and also I think there was a mention earlier in this meeting about how MDOT's data sets were, you know, we couldn't have done what we did in this plan without MDOT's data set. And I did want to reinforce that because a lot of these statewide data sets we definitely leaned on heavily and, you know, used extensively in this process, and they were invaluable to the process in terms of getting everything done within the parameters we were given. So definitely much appreciated. And there's a lot, the amount of data that's available in this region is just wonderful. So on that topic, short trip opportunity areas, I think a lot of you will recognize that data set, and that's, of course, from MDOT and looking at where there are clusters of destinations that are close together that could indicate the potential for greater active transportation trips. So where people can walk and bike to destinations and not have to travel, you know, 5-10 miles to get to the grocery store, for example. Things are just kind of closer. And those are scored in a numerical fashion, but we did break those down into categories to ease interpretation and to use in the analysis that we ended up doing for the network. Average level of connectivity. So this is a bit of a hybrid data set where we looked at a combination of intersection density and level of traffic stress, again, a state data set. So the idea being if you have areas that have relatively very low level of traffic stress connections coupled with high intersection density, you have a lot of parallel routes, you have a lot of connectivity, you're reaching a lot of people. So if you implement a bike improvement in that sort of area with a very high connectivity score, then that improvement is going to be accessible to many more people than if you were to construct a similar improvement in an area with low connectivity. So that's not, the primary consideration, but it was one thing that we looked at when we were developing the network itself. Next slide. Vulnerable communities. This is a BMC data set. Most of you probably seen by now, but this is based on the Vulnerable Population Index score that BMC developed, and we did break this down in categories and did consider this in the formation of the network, so that we're weighing areas or trying to weigh connections higher where they will provide much needed connections to populations that don't have as many options to get around. So, and then bicyclist level traffic stress. This is again an MDOT data set, and we use this to as a baseline to determine where there are currently high stress roadway corridors versus low stress roadway corridors for bicycle travel. Next. And so how we used all this. This network, so the slide here breaks into two columns. We have data analysis, or kind of a quantitative aspect of this process, and we have a community stakeholder input, or kind of a more qualitative aspect to this. So when we went through the data analysis and looked at the factors, including the ones that I just discussed in the previous slides, that can get us partway there, a good bit of the way there in terms of what existing and planned bikeways throughout the region kind of would score the highest or be most important to rise to the top and to implement in the near future. After that, we had to filter it with community engagement, what we heard from stakeholders and the advisory committee, and also some internal judgment in terms of where, for example, there might be if we added something if we added raise a priority of a segment that was previously not really called out in the data analysis, would that connect to high priority segments, for example, in a relatively short amount of space? So there are qualitative considerations we used, and we used both methods to arrive at the network, which you'll see in the next slide. So broadly, and I won't spend too much time here because we'll get into it in a little more detail. It's also very difficult to see the scale, and we're going to have tools where you can zoom in and out interactively, and also have large maps that you can see the network in greater detail. But just to give you an idea, it is an extensive network. It's a lot of mileage, and we're broken it down into regional bikeways, community bikeways, local bikeways, and as I'll explain a little more soon, high stress bikeways, which seems at first glance counterintuitive to the plan's purpose, but we'll explain that a bit in a moment. Next slide. And as I mentioned, it is an extensive network. So 1,100 bikeway miles total, and 330 of those are existing. 782 are planned or have been planned by jurisdictions. So it's a lot, but we have broken it down into, as I'll get into when we get to the prioritization section, we have broken it down into more manageable pieces that will help with future implementation. Next slide. So to get a little more into how we formulated the network and classified it. So again, as I just mentioned, we had regional bikeways, community bikeways, and local bikeways. And so although there are a lot of bikeways, a lot of recommendations on the network itself, we did break them down so they kind of serve different purposes. Regional bikeways, which here are kind of the thickest lines, they're the backbone. They're really those corridors which we would envision as very important for people moving around the region and within the region, depending on where you are. But just those connective, longer distance segments and corridors that could facilitate, both longer distance bicycle travel, but also travel within jurisdictions on some of those main routes. And then community bikeways, those tier down, just looking at where there are bikeways planned and existing that facilitate movement primarily around activity centers and jurisdictions where there are hubs. And you can see examples of these in pretty much every county. If you look at Howard County, it's pretty visible. You see around Columbia, some kind of main lines bringing you through the community and around in different parts of the community that could then in the future connect to the wider network or the wider regional network. And then you see some smaller lines that will kind of bring people around the community, but maybe not necessarily connect to those regional facilities in the same way. Then local bikeways is kind of the lowest tier in terms of travel and distance, but this is just a tier that gets people to and from their neighborhoods and low stress streets. So it's kind of the final. If you think about it in a way as the same vein as a functional classification system, it's kind of a very light method or very light idea of that for a bike network. So going from the regional, longer distance, higher volume potentially, and then going down to kind of the more local, lower volume facilities. Next slide. So this is important. Throughout the planning effort, we did focus on where that map I showed you before, that was only showing where there are low stress, all ages and abilities style facilities. This map expands the network a bit and shows where there are things what we call high stress bikeways. And the reason for this, because this plan is not able to change local recommendations or alter and create new recommendations, there are recommendations at the local level that we're recommending bikeways that would be higher stress than all ages and abilities bike network. And we wanted to balance. We don't want to completely exclude those because we know that maybe there's a plan 10 years ago that recommended a bike lane on a certain corridor. Nowadays, we would say, okay, this really needs to be a protected bike lane in order to appeal to a wider audience, to be able to be accessible to all ages and abilities. And because we don't want to completely omit connections like that from next steps in the process, because with small tweaks or a different facility type, they could be a comfortable facility. And then, when that plan is updated, or if there's an implementation effort, then that facility could be changed at that stage. So we want to be a little bit dynamic and allow for changing additions and not preclude important connections from being on the regional network because of a plan that may not have, taken or an existing facility that is stressful that could be upgraded in the future. So those are all considerations we tried to balance in this. But we did want to be transparent about the fact that some of the existing and planned facilities are already low stress, and some have the potential to be low stress, but are currently higher stress as planned or existing, and they would just need to be made safer. So that's how we try to balance that. And then network gaps. So you'll see the purple circles with kind of the dotted lines throughout this map. Some of them are very hard to see here, of course, but they are identifying where there are gaps in the network that could be in the future. Future plans could and should try to connect these areas so that the region is, better connected, and that we're not saying in our plan, there's no connection, so we're not going to address this at all. But we're trying to address it and draw attention to where there are needs for future efforts without actually making those recommendations in this plan. Next slide. And then supportive recommendations. So of course, the network is one, and then we have a whole range of recommendations that are meant to support the implementation of the network over time. Those are in 5 different categories: data, design, education, outreach, policy, and funding. So I'll get into the first 4 a little bit. The funding, you'll be able to find a lot more information in the plan itself, but I'll go through relatively quickly the next slides is some of the big supportive recommendations. Next slide. So data and design. Data, very important. We actually heard a lot about bikeway maintenance in the BBR effort. So we recommend things like a maintenance request portal, of course, regional planning coordination, active transportation count programs to expand and make those even more robust, general coordination, maybe some nearest reporting for safer streets and where people can talk about or identify areas where they're having issues with safety and conflicts. Design. So, at this level, this plan does not get very deep into design. That's more of a local process, a local decision. But we do discuss, uniform design standards, maybe developing a consistency checklist, things that, we know that there are certain design elements and types of facilities that are just more comfortable and they're safer. And so we want to this effort to try to facilitate movement towards that in the region and enhance consistency and promote consistency in design, and also to, if there is a BBR network segment that receives funding, for example, this consistency checklist could help ensure that if there is BBR related funding in the future, then is that facility doing what it needs to do to be an all ages and abilities facility and a comfortable facility? And it's not, bike lanes on an arterial that's heavily trafficked, for example. So that's the idea there. Next step. Next slide. Sorry, I keep saying next step. Policy. So a lot here, complete streets policies, this goes from technical assistance to kind of coordination between different jurisdictions, but plan coordination, making sure that in the future, as jurisdictions develop updated or new active transportation plans, then making sure that the BBR network is considered in the development of those plans and that they're talking together or talking to each other so that the ties remain strong. And looking at things like transit connections, bikeways and bus stop interactions, and state roads and how those decisions are made. So I won't go into a lot of depth there, but that's more you can read into in the final plan. And then also bike parking. So this is where we heard a lot about where do I park my bike? Where can I have that end of trip facility that's essential for a complete journey? Looking at bike parking and bike rack distributions, there are other regions that are doing have programs that have successfully facilitated the development of those amenities. Maintenance of traffic, accounting for bikes in that, and then again, local plans coordination and coordinating the private development and seeing how that is playing out in different jurisdictions, and if there are things that the BBR process could do to help with recommendations or process components. Next slide. Finally, outreach and education. Probably one of the more important ones in this grouping, in my opinion, the Bikeable Baltimore Regional Working Group. So you'll hear more about this in the future, but the plan definitely is emphasizing developing a group that will long-term track implementation and assist with implementation efforts of the BBR project, so that it's being, in addition to the BPAG or possibly coordinated with or part of it, it will be something that an organization is actively tracking with BMC. So it's not just BMC that's tracking the implementation of this over time, but that it's a shared effort and other groups can be involved. Next slide. Benefits and prioritization. So next slide. Start with prioritization. And as we mentioned, it's an extensive network. There's a lot to consider. And we did break that down significantly. So when we look at overall categories, we came up with 3: filling priority gaps, network expansion opportunities, and full network build out. So filling priority gaps is then further broken down into imminent projects, which is a 0 to 2 year time frame. But filling priority gaps overall is today to 5 years from now. Expansion opportunities 5 to 10 years, so up to a decade out, and then full network build out would be over 10 years, so kind of very long term build out of the network as we're seeing it here. So this is again intended to balance kind of getting some projects done quickly while keeping others on the prioritization list and on the list for future efforts. Next slide. So benefits. We did quantify benefits to the best of our ability in this process, and it's a big network, and we did this analysis at the regional scale, and it's really quantifying, again, tying back to the handlebar interviews or the community outreach that we and BMC did in person throughout the region. It's really tying to people. A lot of people mentioned benefits that they experience personally or would like to experience, or that they believe a bike network, an enhanced bike network could provide for the region. And it's really started to quantify some of what we've been hearing in terms of people's desires for the network and why they bike and why they think that's an important mode for them. and also just convey the benefits in, why is this network important? Another set of reasons to pursue implementation and to, frame for future funding applications and future efforts. So the way we did this broadly, we estimated benefits that were tied to a model that estimated bicycling demand increases based on improved LTS and increase in short trip opportunities, or increase of short trips under 3 miles. So where the question was basically where, if the network were fully built out, if the regional network is fully built out, where would we see an increase in short trips due to improved bicycle comfort and accessibility? And we looked at 4 different categories: environmental sustainability, quality of life, economic competitiveness, state of good repair. So environmental sustainability looked at emissions, how will emissions go down, quality of life, reduce mortality due to increased activity. So just exercise and activity and how that reduces costs on our healthcare system. Economic competitiveness. This was congestion mitigation and reduction in household transportation costs. So how much do people save based on not having to own it, maybe not having to drive nearly as much as they did before they were able to use the network in a more comprehensive manner? And what kind of congestion mitigation factors could this apply? And then state of good repair. What does it mean for our roads if there's fewer vehicles, fewer vehicle trips being made? How does this cumulatively impact our roads? And what we found on the right, and then the next slide will get into the actual calculated benefits of this process, but we found that there would be 31.7 million additional bike trips. It's 95,000 new bicycle trips per day, and about 9 to 10 million fewer vehicle miles traveled. And pretty significant. Keep in mind, this is an estimate. This is not fate, but if the network were to be built out fully, and over time we could realize these benefits incrementally. Next slide. But what those increased numbers would lead to is 1.727 million savings in environmental sustainability benefits, 113.3 approximately in quality of life benefits, 6.3 economic competitiveness, and about 1 million in state of good repair, so reducing road wear and tear, which adds up to 121.9 million in annual benefits. So that's per year. And one thing I would like to note that's particularly important is safety. So a reduction in fatal and serious crashes is not modeled in this, only because at the regional scale, it's very, very difficult for there to be an accurate accounting of that, just due to a variety of different factors. But an additional, kind of on top of this estimate, we would want to add the idea that there would very likely be fewer bicycle-related crashes in terms of serious and fatal incidents, and that would positively impact the benefits, not only in the human aspect, but also the savings and the economic benefit that goes along with that. Next slide. So next steps, and Charlene, did you want to jump in here, or do you want me to take the next steps too?
Yeah, I can jump in for this part. Thank you, Colin.
Sure. Yeah, thank you.
So next steps, we'll kind of go through this quickly with the September one. I will follow up with an email, but we wanted to discuss with the BPAG members what BR initiatives we want to take next. So would that be maybe a BBR roundtable, maybe an annual summit, maybe work groups associated with BPAG? So we've got all different kinds of ideas that I'll follow up via email with a short survey to get your guys' feedback and see what you guys think would be useful, because we want to make sure this is the most useful for you guys as we try to advance the network and support your work. And then in October, we will present the plan to the technical committee and BRTB to get them familiar with things. And then in November, we will present our resolution to them for their consideration. And once that's completed, we will publicly release the BBR plan, webpage and story map. And then ongoing efforts, of course, include promoting the plan and then continuing the cross-jurisdictional coordination and engaging with our advocates and the public. So I think that is all for that right now. Do we have any questions from BPAG members first?
I appreciate that last photo there.
You gave some good quotes. It was a good interview.
I want to identify him as the mayor, but I really appreciate the analysis. You know, the short trips map. I'm curious if you have a level of detail that would allow you to do blow-ups of specific areas for jurisdictions to use, because I could see some of what you did for this regional analysis actually being something we could leverage at the local level, because we haven't done that kind of analysis locally, and so I could see a lot of value in it. But.
Yeah, definitely. We would are always happy to work with our local jurisdictions and to share data to see if that'll assist with any work that you're doing. We don't have any like PDF maps that are kind of blown up at that level, but the interactive maps will be available on the story map, and then of course we can share the data and then work with you guys if you need a specific kind of PDF map.
Will the needs assessment type map, are those going to be GIS platform or PDFs?
So those will be GIS based. So only the plan will have GIS and the PDF.
No, that's fine then. I think
Yep.
just to zoom in using the GIS tool will be helpful.
Yeah. Yep. And then we can share the data set if your GIS folks want to take some look at it.
And Eric, are you talking about the STOA map or the short trip opportunity area map?
Yeah.
Yeah. So since also in addition to what Charlene was saying, that is a state data set, and I believe MDOT might have an explorable interactive version of it currently. So I would not want to misdirect you to where the most recent version of that is, but MDOT may be able to help you with that in terms of. So as a disclaimer, we did categorize it a little differently. So we broke it scored. We broke those scores into categories for our map. And you can coordinate with us if you want to know kind of the different scoring, how that we broke them down, so you could get a similar map to use for yourself.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions from the public or guest attendees?
I'll just note that it's on my radar to make that STOA map available in the interactive way, because I think currently we just have the PDF version up as well. But yeah, we are aware people want to look at it at the more detailed level.
Yeah. Great. Well, if you have any questions, of course, you can follow up with me or Colin with any questions. And let's see. So we're running a little behind, so we don't have as much time for the roundtable discussion. So we can do that quickly, or if you want to include anything with more detail in the chat. But I'll hand that off to Eric to kind of go through everybody.
Thanks, Charlene. Yeah, we'll try to get through it quickly. I only have to say we continue to work on our major bike projects here in Annapolis that are state and federally funded. There are several. We're hoping to break ground before the end of this year on the West East Express, which is the big one that has federal funding, and so I'm pretty excited about that. And we lost our. Maybe I'll let Will talk. I was going to talk about our micromobility, but Will, just do you have anything you'd like to share? If you're still on. May stepped away. We lost our micromobility provider, Bird, recently, so we're going to be rebidding that program, and so it's unfortunate, but we're going to continue to try to make micromobility a facet of our approach here in Annapolis. So that's the only update, I guess. Sorry, one other thing. our Safe Streets for All citywide mobility action plan is finally going to be going out for RFP, hopefully by Friday this week, by Friday. So that's it. Anne Arundel County.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight that we had the WB&A Trail Bridge ribbon cutting ceremony yesterday, and that was very exciting. Now we can all ride like 13.7 miles between Prince George's County and Odenton. So that's really exciting. Are we allowed to talk about grants that we've won?
I think they've been officially announced at this point, so I think it's okay.
They have been.
Okay, so we're happy to say that we did get the Transportation Alternative Safe Routes to School Coordinator Grant award. So that's very exciting. We also got our bikeways awarded for a South Shore Trail spur to the Waterworks Park from down off of Bestgate Road. Eric, you might be interested in that.
Awesome. Great to hear.
MHSO grant, that's for design, by the way. For more bike ped safety training in K through 5 grades. Unfortunately, we did not get all of it awarded that we asked for. We were hoping to do 26 schools, but we only got enough for 5. So we're trying to see if we can fund it in some other way, but if not, we're going to move forward with that. That's about it, unless you guys want to hear about the trails, but there's a lot of trail activity.
Probably not because of the time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Tanya. Baltimore City.
Yeah, sure. Hello. So just a quick 2 things here. So we are pushing forward on 100% plans for Washington Street. And then we did win a Kim Lamphere Award for Remington Avenue. So excited for that as well. Thank you.
Okay. Much appreciated. Baltimore County. No one from Baltimore County. What about Carroll County? No, Carroll County. Hartford.
Hello, everyone. I am Cyril, the new transportation planner for Hartford County. And with respect to update, I am glad to say Hartford County has been awarded the Transportation Alternative Program grant and the MDOT Bikeways Award for the design of the shared use path along US 40, specifically from Aberdeen train station to Street Airy in Harvey de Grace. So it is a little update. All right, thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Howard.
Hi, Christy Tuff here from Howard County. So I wanted to let people know we are having a public meeting for our BPA area, bicycle pedestrian priority area. We heard about the program earlier, and Howard County was awarded, was recognized for the area of Elkridge last year. And we're having a public meeting for that, for the planning process. It's October 8th at Elkridge Library from 5 to 7 p.m. And then on our grant updates, we also received a Safe Routes to School coordinator grant from MDOT. So we're excited about getting that started. And we have a couple grants through BMC's Transportation Land Use and Connections program as well that that we just received notification on. One is for a feasibility study for a bridge in the bike pedestrian bridge in the Kindler Road area of Kingston Drive in Columbia, and the others to do a study for the New Cut Road, existing New Cut Road, to convert it to one-way road with a pathway going in on the other side of the road. Those are our updates for Howard County.
All right. Thanks a lot, Chris. Queen Anne's, I think Steve had to leave early, so anybody else from Queen Anne's on the call? Okay. Let's go to MDE. Anybody? Hearing no one. MDP. Okay. MHSO.
Hi, everybody. Cynthia Spriggs. A lot of what Meg and Francine talked about, just preparing for Walktober, Walk Maryland Day, and Walk to School Day, as well as being part of the Walk-in-Ours. So lots of stuff going on there. We did, as Tanya mentioned, just announced all of our federal grants that came out. And so I can drop a link for our website so you can see we did get quite a number of applications this week or this year. So we have a lot of projects coming in to the region. I have a lot of state grants they've already been running, but we did get a handful of federal grants in the region as well for Ped Bike.
Right. Thanks a lot, Cynthia. MTA, anybody here?
Nothing. I'm MTA.
Okay, thank you. SHA? I guess we heard from Molly earlier. And Secretary's Office, I know we've got quite a bit on our agenda already, but anything else?
I think we've covered it with the Trails Walktober and all of the exciting grant announcements. So thank you all.
Thanks, Meg. Back to BMC. Anything else to announce?
Just quick update on the Patapsco Regional Greenway Cherry Hill segment. We're preparing to have public comment period and our second public meeting in October. So that's very exciting. Number of TLC grants were awarded, and I'll send those via follow-up email. Those of you who got it were notified. Trying to think. I think those are the big updates for now. Thank you.
Charlene, we're at the point in our meeting where we just ask if there's any other business to share from members. Anything else to add?
Eric, I just want to say, hey, Cynthia, I didn't mean to sound ungrateful. We're very grateful for whatever MHSO could give us. I know it's a very competitive process, so that's it.
Oh, I know you guys are grateful. I just wanted everybody to know we got quite a bit this year, which is good. That means that our stuff is getting out there, and it's good. There were a lot of people that kind of were in that same position, so it's great that we've got all these grants going out, and wish we had more federal funding to hand out.
I know it. At this point, happy to just say that our next meeting is going to be November 19th, and we're ready to adjourn. So thanks everybody for joining as always, and lots going on. I'll talk to you at the next meeting.
Thank you.